All right, everyone, welcome to the Investor Evolution podcast. I'm your host, Kimberly Hoyt. Today I think this is going to be a really fun one. We have Zach Busch, and he is the host of the Healthy Wellbeing podcast. He's a real estate investor and he's a CrossFit dude. And so we're going to talk a lot about fitness, which is a little bit different from what we've ever talked about here. So I'm really excited. And we're going to tie that in to real estate investing and how we can kind of pull from both of those areas and move forward in our journeys, both in fitness and in real estate. So, Zach, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. This is gonna be fun. I love being on other people's podcasts where I have my own, so it's always fun being on the other side, telling a little bit of my story, trying to give a little bit of my perspective because I spend the time listening to other people's perspectives, which is always great. So definitely happy to be on, glad to be on, and looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's start on the fitness side of things. So we were talking a little bit before we started rolling about your fitness journey and your background. So why don't you fill us in with that? Like, where did you start? How did you get into this crazy CrossFit world, which I'm super excited to learn about because I know nothing. So I'm jazzed about this.
Perfect. Yeah. So, I mean, growing up, I'm definitely fortunate in the fact that my parents were both into fitness. My mom was a step instructor back in like the 90s, and my dad just did stuff, on the side too, like at the Y or whatever. And so I definitely am fortunate to have them as role models of like, hey, this is just normal. This is just what we do. And I know they had went through, like, they did not grow up with that. So they had to kind of make that change for themselves. So definitely fortunate in that aspect where that was kind of just normalized in the household. And I grew up playing sports like most kids, just trying all the different sports. I played baseball, I played soccer, I swam, I played basketball for a season. I'm terrible at basketball. Pretty decent at anything else I can kind of jump in, but basketball for whatever reason did not click with me. And so played sports through high school. I went to Drexel University. I played club soccer there. I swam on the club swim team, right? So it was that nice balance between like being a Division I athlete and like just having fun and playing, which is really all I wanted to do. So
Mhm.
played soccer, swam through high school and college, and started CrossFitting when I was in high school. My mom's company's gym, the person who ran the gym had like discovered CrossFit. This is back in 06, 07, like really early CrossFit. And so
Mhm.
he started like testing it out with boot camps at her work. And that's how she got kind of interested in it. She'd already been teaching step classes. So she had seen a bunch of different group classes. And that's essentially what CrossFit is this group class. And
Mhm.
so she brought that to me and my sister, and we're like, hey, this is probably really good. It's got weightlifting components to it. It's got conditioning components to it. It combines the two. So like, let's look into doing this and maybe, help just kind of off season work and in season strength training, right? Because at least in our high school, the coaches of the teams would run the lifting portions, and like they weren't certified in it. They were just doing kind of what they knew and what they done in the past. And so it wasn't super organized. So we started doing that as just a supplement to the sports. And then ultimately, when college was over, sport was done, right? I mean, I could play pickup and adult leagues, but didn't really end up doing that. And unfortunate in that fact that I'd already built up this, going to CrossFit outside of sports. And so that kind of became the sport. And for anybody who's not familiar with CrossFit, it basically mixes in a lot of different things. Like I mentioned, there's Olympic weightlifting, there's gymnastic stuff, there's like monostructural, like running and rowing, and just combining all those different components, preparing you for whatever may come in whatever workout that happens. But they also have benchmark workouts where you can repeat it so you can compare your results from a year ago, 2 years ago, and also they're group classes. So you can be a buddy, which I met a ton of my friends through there. And now we're competing against each other. We're going to competitions. So it really became it was a nice transition from like organized sports to like this fitness sport. And
Mhm.
was doing that for a while, loved it, right? The community aspect of it. My friends were all now in there. I met my wife through it. So it was really definitely became a huge part. And I was doing a lot. I was there a ton. I was helping people because I've been doing it. I've been doing it for 17, 18 years at this point. And so that's how I got started. I ended up starting coaching. I dialed in like my nutrition and started to want to help people do that with themselves as well. And so that's kind of how the progression went from, just sports to this is just kind of a lifestyle now. Again, I'm fortunate with kind of my starting point, but anybody can really make that change when they're willing and able to.
That's awesome. I think it's really cool that you've built this community around you, or the community has been building around you, right? And your friends are there. You met your wife there. That's really a fun little story and background. Now, so as you've been kind of improving and iterating, right? Like I think that's the biggest thing is, it may be similar things that you're doing, but you're improving, you're setting those standards and, surpassing those. What is kind of like the next level for where you're at now? So you've been coaching, are you helping others train for competitions? Again, I apologize if I'm ignorant because I don't know all that, but yeah, how does that look for you as you're moving forward with it?
Yeah, so I think with anything, there's stages in general, right? There's seasons that people go through. And
Mhm.
for me, I'm in my, early 30s now. I'm going to be 33 in a couple weeks. I have a son, a 1-year-old son. So where the training for me personally was before was like, how much stronger can I get? How much faster can I get? Like, how much better can I do at these competitions? That has transitioned to like, I just want to go and get a good workout in. Like, obviously, I'm going to push myself, but I don't really care about increasing the weights or doing anything like that. So for me personally, I'm into like, let's just maintain, let's be there, let's help people. And so that's for me personally. And when it comes to like helping other people and coaching, like I love doing that. I love like whatever I can meet anybody at whatever level they're at. We get a lot of beginners, right? A lot of people have seen CrossFit, they want to come in and do it. So I like
Mhm.
starting with the beginners. Like you can see the biggest improvements with them. You can make the most impact. But at the same time, anybody who's looking to like dial in the nutrition portion of it, like I like helping them because I've had to do that for myself. And so like it's easy to hit that plateau if you've been doing it for
Mhm.
a while and just needing that little extra help. So for me personally, that's the like maintain season, like, hey, let's just stay healthy for my son and my family. And
Mhm.
just being able to help as many people as I can, whether they're just getting started or really just trying to dial things in.
Cool. Love it. So, where did you start as far as career wise, and how did you get into real estate investing? Is that something that has always been, or were you in another career path and stumbled onto real estate?
Yeah, so I went to Drexel, studied mechanical engineering. As part of Drexel, you do 3 6-month internships. They call them co-ops, but that's like part of their
Mhm.
program. So I went through 3 different companies through those co-ops, and my last one was going into my senior year, and that's the company I currently work at now and started out of school. Was I went through it. Mine was from like June to September was my co-op like, going into my senior year. And then in January, I was like, hey, I like that co-op. The first two hated, did not like what we were doing, which was the nice part of it. It wasn't not just finding what I did like, but what I don't like, right? If I'd gotten that first
Mhm.
job as my first co-op, it would have been a real miserable first couple of years potentially. So I emailed the company that I did my last co-op with in January before I graduated and was like, hey, love working with you guys. If you need somebody, let me know. So I had that job secured in January before I graduated in June. So started doing that and have been doing that ever since. It's been a little over 9 years now at that company doing that job. And so I think it was like 3 or 4 years ago. I'm doing the job, great company, love the company. They're super supportive. The work is good. I wouldn't say I loved like going into the office and sitting behind a desk 8 9 hours a day, like consistently. Um, so I started kind of searching around, like seeing what else is out there, not necessarily job wise, but I ended up stumbling across the Fire Red subreddit, the Financial Independence Retire Early, and just kind of
Mhm.
seeing what that was about, right? I mean, retire early, financial independence is like those buzzwords. So I was like, let me look into it. And so I started learning a ton of information through that. And the concept
Mhm.
of that is let's save as much as we can and invest that into index funds, mutual funds, stock market where I can eventually live on the dividends and the increase of the stocks going up, which they have been over the length of time going up with dips. But so using that money to retire and kind of seeing that, okay, there's another avenue, right? It doesn't have to be the
Mhm.
standard go to school, get a job work that 40 years and then retire. So it kind of just started opening my eyes to other things, grabbing that different
Mhm.
mindset. But I also learned a lot about personal finance through that too, which is amazing. Like, how can I save? How can I get into tax advantaged retirement accounts, HSAs and 401ks and IRAs, and doing all of that. And that ultimately led me to Bigger Pockets, which is a real estate investing forum, and their podcast, which goes through anything from beginners to experienced people, covers all sorts of avenues in real estate asset classes, single families, multifamilies, self-storage. And so
Mhm.
that opened up a whole nother window
Yeah.
of like, oh my goodness, look at all of these different opportunities that you can have and you can look at doing. And
Mhm.
you can scale them at different ways. So that's kind of how I got into real estate, was realizing that, okay, I don't want to sacrifice absolutely everything by saving 80, 90% of my budget like the fire community wanted to do. And because
Mhm.
there's no guarantees for tomorrow, for next week, or for next year.
Sure.
So like, to not ever go on a vacation, to just potentially retire 10, 15 years earlier didn't seem like a full sacrifice I was willing to make. But the real estate option was, okay, like, put in extra work. How can I make more money and build that long-term wealth so that in 20 years, everything's appreciated and the loan's been paid down? Like, that seemed like, okay, I'd rather have a more active role and increase the
Mhm.
income rather than decrease my spending. That seemed like a more doable path. So
Sure.
that was the path from like my job, which I'm still at, to
Mhm.
getting into real estate.
Awesome. And how long have you been in the real estate realm? How many years?
Yeah, so the fire, like discovering fire, was probably like 2019. I probably
Okay.
spent a year reading books, listening to podcasts on real estate before I did anything at all. And it was just education mode. That, and with a little bit of fear, a little bit of mindset issues for sure, because it's scary, right? I mean,
Right.
and that, like, just learning like, hey, you don't have to have hundreds of thousands of dollars to invest in real
Mhm.
estate. You can, like, that. If you have that, that's great. It certainly helps. But
Right.
so about a year of like just learning. And I eventually stumbled across Pace Morby on one of the Bigger Pockets podcasts and saw his community, and felt like that was a good opportunity to like get into a place, right, with the CrossFit side. Like, that community has changed my life in fitness. Like, let's get into another community that can change my life financially. And so that was kind of the catalyst and the reason I joined. Was like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing, but at least I'm doing this with a bunch of other people who is a
Right.
mix of new people and experienced people that can help each other along the way.
Right, right. Well, and that's so cool, right? Because just like your CrossFit community, where there are those newbies coming in and you get to help them kind of learn the ropes, teach them the ways, as you venture into this real estate group, and especially in the I call it Pace Morby world, especially as you venture into this Pace Morby world where the huge emphasis is on community and helping others. Like, you kind of all come in and you're automatically supported in a way. And so I love that parallel that, you're coming in, there's people ahead of you, people right with you, people coming in behind you, and you get to help each other and provide value to each other. So as you ventured into Pace Morby World, which community did you join into?
Sub two.
Okay. And so tell me, kind of from that kind of springboard as you came into this community, like, what did you start with? Where have you grown to? What does that look like?
Yeah. So I joined a little over 2 years ago at this point. I think it was like the end of 21, beginning of 22. And
Okay.
another one of the reasons I joined was they had just finished up this, I guess, challenge. Like, Pace loves to throw his challenges, but it was this live challenge where they built a wholesaling business from
Mhm.
scratch. And it was due with the premise of, we're only going to work on this 3 hours a day. So somebody with a W-2 could potentially get done at 5 from work and work until 8 to build this business, like, just to kind of show that you can do it that way. And so I really like that, because I'd listened, I had knowledge, I had listened to the podcasts, I read the books,
Mhm.
but I still had no idea what I was doing. And
Mhm.
so I was like, I can follow steps, I can just copy what they're doing. They already have a successful wholesaling business, so they clearly know what they're doing. Let me do that. And so that's what I did. I mean, I jumped in. It was called the Zero to Hero, and they were all Zoom recording, so, which was kind of nice because I could listen to them like 1.5 to 2 speed and
Yep.
pick up the information a lot quicker. And so I just started that. I just, I hired the VA. I pulled the list for cold calling and texting. And for anybody who doesn't know, wholesaling is reaching out direct to seller, direct to agent, and finding properties or owners who are in distress, whether the property is vacant or just a problem property, or they inherited it. Maybe it's just been neglected and they just don't want anything to do with it, right? It's just causing a headache, or they forgot about it, didn't know about it, but it can't really sell on the open market, or at least not like easily.
Awesome.
So
Mhm.
you're solving the problem by coming in and buying it from them for a certain price, say 100,000, and then going to somebody who would flip it and selling it to them. Basically selling the contract to the end buyer for 110, and you make the difference, which would be a $10,000 assignment fee. And so you don't ever actually own the property. So it's a nice way to get into real estate without having to do all the rehab and taking on that risk, but still making decent chunks of money, just depending on how good your negotiation and sales skills are. Um, so
Mhm.
that's how I started. I did the cold calling, or I had somebody that I hired that did the cold calling. I did the call follow ups. I did the underwriting, the TCing, the negotiations. Did it all for about, well, I did it for 2 years. The first year I did it solo. Had
Mhm.
some success, right? There was challenges there. I was learning a ton of stuff, like information that I would have never learned from books. So just doing
Sure.
the work definitely taught me a ton, but also about myself, on what I like to do, what I'm good at, whether or not I do like it or don't like it, right? You can be good at something, but hate doing it. And
Yeah.
so that's what I learned a lot about myself. And the second year in wholesaling, met somebody else in sub twos in my area, and worked with him, just JV, did a joint venture where we worked together. We didn't have an LLC together. We just kind of split roles and duties. And he was doing a lot of the seller calls and the follow ups. He had more time. He liked being on the phones more than I did. And I did all the back end stuff. I'd get up before work. I'd make sure the lists were pulled for the text messages to go out. And so we split that work up, worked together. And it was definitely way better, right? He was working in his zone in Genus. I was working in mine. We closed a
Mhm.
bunch of deals and got that done, and it was great. And the end of last year, we bought a property together. We did a burr on it, but it was still a ton of work. And
Mhm.
we both were like, we don't really want to wholesale. I didn't really get into real estate to wholesale. So what are our
Mhm.
other options? So we kind of parted ways mutually, kind of on the same page. And I flipped into, okay, like what can I do outside of wholesaling? Why did I get into real estate? That's where I met Jesse Stanton in his business coaching course, which I did and still in his group. And
Mhm.
his whole thing is go from to not wholesale, but to buy and hold. So that has been my focus recently, is the buy and hold. I bought the property at the end of last year, and now it was like, okay, how can I dissolve the wholesaling business and now work on focusing on buying and holding, whether that's creative deals or doing more burrs, because I did enjoy that process. So that's kind of
Nice.
where the whole process was, kind of long-winded, to where I got to now.
No, and I think a lot of people start in one area, and I think it's pretty natural for a lot of people to start in that wholesaling realm because it seems like the
Mm-hmm.
easiest to enter into. Whether it is or not, up for debate for sure. But I think a lot of people start there because they can, kind of work it into their schedule. They can, hire others, the VAs and stuff to do the calling. But what I love about it is, I see that kind of parallel between your fitness and the wholesaling and the real estate business, right? Where you start off in one thing and you try it out and you work on it, you build it, you build that muscle, you learn the skills that you need, and whether that was CrossFit going into your soccer, you know, career or whether that's soccer transferring into your CrossFit career, right? Like it can kind of go both ways, but those skills are transferable and you're taking those things from the wholesaling journey, the things that you loved, I think it's very important to know what you don't like.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is a huge benefit. And so do you find yourself as more of that integrator side of things versus the visionary talking to all the people? I mean, you got a podcast, dude. You gotta like talking to people.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny you asked that, because I get that question a lot, especially being a mechanical engineer. People automatically assume like integrator, right? I mean, we probably both know people that are engineers that do great on the phones and that are more of that visionary role, right? That person who sees things from high levels, has all the ideas, rather than the integrator who's like the COO, who's doing all of the work, the back end stuff. So
Mhm.
I've taken that test where there was the visionary integrator test, the rocket fuel. I forget if there's a name for it. But I scored like evenly on both. Like I was probably 60 or 70 on
Really
both.
nice.
So I would say
Mhm.
it's a balance. I'm comfortable behind the computer with spreadsheets and setting those up. And I don't love setting up systems, but I can figure them
Sure.
out, I would say, a little bit faster than most people, especially somebody who's a true visionary who's like, I don't want anything to do with that. So
Yeah.
I would say there's a balance there for sure. Like I enjoy like this kind of stuff where it's talking one-on-one with people. I've gotten better at groups, and I run an underwriting Zoom every Friday. So it's like kind of a mix between the integrator side where I'm doing the spreadsheet and helping a group of people and being front and center on things. So it's definitely a balance for sure. And I love what you said about learning what you don't like to do, right? Even if you're good at it, right? Figuring out what you don't like to do is almost more important than what you do like to do. You can start crossing things off and it'll start naturally steering you through towards the things that you do enjoy doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And so with that wholesaling journey, what were the things that you found you didn't like? What was the things that you're like, if I never have to do that again, will be like great day. What are those things for you?
I'm a terrible negotiator. I have no problem. I wouldn't say I like talking to sellers either. Like that whole like marketing sales, like wholesaling. I think that's kind of the caveat is wholesaling isn't really real estate. It's a marketing business, marketing and sales business first and foremost. Like real estate is just the product that you're slinging. So like
Yeah.
that's the part of it was like marketing and sales is definitely not my forte. Like talking to somebody I don't know about, especially wholesaling, they're distressed properties, they're
Yeah.
distressed situations. So they're hard to navigate for me. And I can have a
Mhm.
conversation with somebody. I'm probably too to the point of like, here's where my number is at. And like, that's it. And without kind of like figuring out what really is the problem and how can we like push them towards the number that works for both of us. So like
Right.
that was definitely it. And that's why when I met the person that I worked with, he like took that on. And like I could do some of the follow-ups, especially as that conversation got further. Like I did our TC work.
Mhm.
So like I had to have those conversations. So it was definitely more of like I don't want to do the talking to sellers and the negotiations. I'm so bad at negotiating. I probably have lost tens of thousands of dollars left on the table because I was like too scared to ask for the lower number or to ask my buyer for a higher number. And so, I think that
Right.
was definitely one of the biggest things is like, I am not a good negotiator. I can tell you what to get it for and you can go get it.
Right, right. Now, as you're transitioning into this buy and hold business, tell me those skills that you're bringing, whether that's from, your wholesaling business or from your fitness journey that you've had. What are those skills that you're bringing into that to help? And I'm wondering, is it more like mindset? Is it Yeah, so tell me about that.
Yeah. I mean, mindset's always a big portion of
Mhm.
any part, like taking the leap from just into something new, right? When I first started wholesaling, I had no idea what I was doing. In spending a year learning, it took me forever to just finally make the leap into doing something. So mindset for
Mhm.
sure is always going to be, I wouldn't say an issue, but it's always going to be something you have to deal with and face head on and work on. Everybody who's successful is like, hey, imposter syndrome, where it's like you don't feel like you deserve where you're at, or like you haven't done the thing, even though you have. Like that happens at every level, at all level, and it's just being able to
Mhm.
push through that. So for sure, mindset. I mean, even in the
Mhm.
gym is a challenge too. Like there's some days where it's just like, I don't know if I'm doing this right. Do I trust the work? Like, and so that kind of leads into like just being patient and trusting the process is the
Mhm.
like biggest most important thing, like having to show up every day, do the boring things, do it consistently, because ultimately that's what's going to lead to it. And
Mhm.
that was definitely the challenge, making the transition, because wholesaling was like my VA would bring in leads every day and I'd have to call them. Like I know whenever she brought in that day, I would need to call. Like that was just the number.
Mhm.
Whereas in buy and hold, right, I have to decide how many properties I'm going to underwrite, right? And that might be a result of two, of how many wholesalers have sent me deals or how many agents have sent me deals. But,
Mhm.
if I'm not getting those deals, how can I go out and like be consistent? What's the numbers that I need to hit? So it was just figuring out the new key performance indicators, the
Mhm.
KPIs from
Right.
wholesaling to buy and hold, right? Wholesaling, you need to send out a certain number of texts. Your VA needs to make a number of calls, have a certain number of conversations. You need to have a certain number of leads coming in before you close X amount of contracts and so on. So it's just kind of figuring out, all right, how many properties do I need to underwrite, to get one under contract, how many under contract actually go through, and just figuring out
Mhm.
that. So a little bit of mindset and a little bit of just like consistency. How can I be consistent in this new portion of real estate?
Mhm. Well, and that's kind of where you're at with your fitness journey, right? Like you're in that maintenance mode and you've found that balance of working in the gym, working with your nutrition so that it's more of a maintenance thing. And that how long did that take you? You said you've been doing this for 17, 18 years, right? It wasn't something that happened overnight. And same thing as you get into your buy and hold business, you're going to iterate, you're going to refine, you're going to find the things that work best for you. And so I think that's really the key. And I think the biggest thing for new investors as they're coming in is, they see people who have been doing this for several years and see the business that they're generating and feel like it's so difficult, but really it is just taking the time and taking the steps, right? You're not going to become an Olympic class weightlifter overnight or even probably in a year. I have no idea about that either, but I assume that takes so much time and we just get so impatient. So how have you navigated that feeling of, wanting to accelerate and go, but knowing, you kind of have to let it happen as it does?
I think just like you said, it's remembering what it took for me to get to where I am on the fitness level and the health level, and just
Mhm.
applying that over. Like a lot of times when I'm struggling with the real estate, I have to go back to like what am I successful in and what has worked for me on the fitness side, because they translate
Mhm.
over so well. And I love what you said about like you don't see all of the time that people have put into whatever it is, right?
Mhm.
Like people might look at me and be like, wow, you're super lucky that you can keep the weight off or that you can eat like you do. And I found a good balance between like going out to dinner and having a couple drinks and kind of splurging. But you don't see the other, you know, 4 days, 5 days that go into it and the other 17 years that I've been working on it. So it's like especially on social media, you might look at it and be like, wow, they're lucky or fortunate that they've been given this natural ability to be a closer on the phone or be
Mhm.
really fit, but they don't see the work that it takes on the back end. And some of the sacrifices have to be made, but really just the habits that have had to be built. And
Mhm.
it goes to the story. I think it's like a company was having issues with one of their machines, and they had a bunch of people come in and look at it, and the guy comes in and he looks at it for 30 minutes and gives them a bill for $3,000, and they're like, "What are you talking about? You've only been here for a half an hour." He's like, "Yeah, but that bill is for the last 30 years that I've learned how to do this in a half an hour." And so
Mhm.
it's just that it's just reminding myself of like what have I had to do to get to where I am in fitness and be able to maintain this? And what do I need to
Mhm.
start doing on the real estate side or the business side to kind of have those same results?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's where wholesaling, people come into it because they're like, oh, I can make money fast. And then you realize that real estate, you can make money fast, but there's also this long game that you have to play with it. And, um, you know, the idea of working hard, moving fast, but not being in a hurry, I think is kind of that also mindset shift that you need to kind of come into it with. Now, as you've transitioned into this buy and hold business, um, what are some of the things that you're finding out that have stretched your character or stretched your learning? Like what are some of those ways that you're growing into this new avenue for you?
It's making the right connections and building the right relationships. It's when I had first started
Mhm.
wholesaling, I was so focused on just following, the program, the path onto building this, and like the talking to sellers
Mhm.
and getting that dealer contract that I wasn't talking to and networking with other people who are a couple steps ahead of me or are also wholesaling and who are end buyers to kind of figure out what they want and just building that network out targeted towards wholesaling. So I've definitely learned that going through it this time is okay, let's start building relationships with people who have money or have access to people who have money and building those
Mhm.
relationships as I kind of build that deal flow, and also to
Mhm.
build relationships with key people that I'm going to need on my team down the road, whether that's a property manager or like an investor friendly agent. So just trying to build those relationships with other people doing the same thing that I'm doing, especially doing it with other people who are a few steps ahead of me so that I can kind of learn from them, bounce things off of them, and potentially work with them down the road, right? I didn't start gaining traction, real good traction in my wholesaling business until I started working with somebody who complemented my skills. So building the relationships with people that are on the same path as me, being more intentional with that has definitely been one of the biggest things that I've learned. I learned from
Mhm.
wholesaling. That's what I failed on. How can I build that here right this time? And
Mhm.
having those conversations and learning how to have those productive conversations and building that relationship has probably been the biggest thing.
Mhm. Yeah. No, and that's perfect. And that goes back to your fitness journey too, right? You have all these people around you, people at different levels. I assume there's people who coach you or coached you in the past to help you get to the level that you needed to be. And then now you're kind of turning around and helping others. I love that, like there's people ahead of you that help pull you up, right? And then you get to turn around and help the others and bring them up to your level. And what a great feeling of community and collaboration, which I think is huge. And I think what you said is so perfect because when you try to do it on your own, and I know I did that because I didn't know enough. So I didn't want to, like be embarrassed by what I don't know and make myself look stupid. I definitely had a lot of those kind of thoughts going through my head. But once you open yourself up and you're like, I don't know, but I need help. How can I learn? How can I help you as I'm learning? Man, it is the rocket fuel that gets you going. So I think that ability to harness the power of others is huge. And you're not like the drag on the system. You're part of that rocket fuel that keeps moving people forward because you have skills that you can bring to the table that are going to help others. So I think that's a really important piece of get out there, get uncomfortable because it is, and network and find the people who are doing what you want to do and, find ways to work with them. So I think that's a huge part of people's journey that being new feels so intimidating.
Mhm.
I think for a lot of people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's great. Anything else on that point?
No, I think what you said too about like being able to reach behind and above. I think it was David Green on the Bigger Pockets podcast, but he talked about how everybody should be those monkeys in a barrel where like they kind of have the one arm up and one arm down, where like you're supporting people below you, but the people above you are also
Mhm.
kind of pulling you up as well. So that analogy for me always stuck. And
Yeah.
getting getting out of your own head. Because I know I was like same reasons. I was afraid that I was going to look stupid or that I was going to intrude on their time. I think there's ways to
Mhm.
approach somebody who's ahead of you or who you think has good information by being interested in what they're doing and maybe helping them solve a problem while you're kind of
Mhm.
learning and trying to extract any info from them. But I always think about like when I'm going to reach out to somebody who's ahead of me who might be a little intimidating. Again, that's probably my own projection and not necessarily usually most of the 99% of the time they're like
Right.
super nice people want to help. And I just think like
100%.
if somebody behind me or who is behind me and is trying to come up, like if they approached me and had a specific question or like, hey, I'm dealing with this specific situation, which A showed that they took action, which is like for me, if you're targeting to take action, I am more willing to help somebody than who
Yeah.
just ask, and it's like, you've already asked me this, or we've already kind of gone over this. But I try to
Mhm.
remember, would I be willing to help? And not like I said, 99% of the time, like I want to help other people too, because
Mhm.
I know what it's like to be there. So I just try to remember when I'm reaching out to somebody, how I would feel if somebody was reaching out to me. And it's
Mhm.
like, yeah, let's help. Like let's hop on a call and figure out how we can work through this problem. Or I don't know how to help you, but here's somebody who can.
Yep. Yeah. I really like that analogy of the monkeys in the barrel. I think that is such a good mental image of how we should be and how I feel like our community really is. And the other thing we kind of talked about is also, okay, a couple of things. So when someone comes to you and is asking for help because they're a little bit behind where you're at, and you can help them navigate a problem much better than you went through it because you have that experience, man, that helps them.
Mhm.
And it also is so nice to be able to like, oh, buddy, like, don't do this. Like, I've tried it. It's horrible. Move around that obstacle this way. It's going to be much better for you. And that's just rewarding for you to be able to help someone avoid the problem that you have. So I think that's one key. The other one, and with you being in Jesse Stanton's mentorship and business program, that Teach to Learn
Mm,
is another thing that I think really helps move you forward, right? So you're helping them because you're helping them avoid or solve a problem that you went through, but then you're also solidifying it in your brain. And I think that takes you to another level as well. So I think that's really key as well.
100%. I mean, I forget the breakdown of percentages. Is like the best way to learn things, like when you write and take notes, it's like 10% retention or something, and when you
Yeah.
see it and write it, it's like 30%, but then when you teach it, it's like 70% retention, right? Because you have to
Yeah.
really fully understand something to be able to explain it to somebody for them to understand. And
Mhm.
it also provides you the opportunity to learn what you potentially don't know, right? I can talk to you about a topic and you can ask a question because you have no preconceived notions and you're seeing it from a different perspective, and you can ask a question where
Mhm.
it's like, oh man, I did not think about asking that question. Like, I don't know, let me find out. And so you go and find new information because of you teaching. And whether that's real
Mhm.
estate, I mean, I know I started learning way more when I started coaching because now I have to explain the movements. How are your feet positioned? How's the setup? When are you breathing? When are you doing this? When are you doing, and like once you start having to teach that, now I become a better athlete because
Mhm.
I have to teach it with somebody else. I understand it. I can make those tweaks on my own and go for and grow as a person. So I was always hesitant to teach because like, what if I don't know? But like most of the time, the people you're teaching don't know any better either. And even if you say something that's not completely true, you can fix it the next time.
Right, right. And it helps you see it from other angles, and I think that also helps solidify when you listen to a book versus read a book versus listen to it and read it at the same time, you're just using different parts of your brain. And I think it just helps, yeah, like you said, solidify it in your brain so much better. That makes you much better.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's huge part of learning and growing in whatever you're doing. Now, as you're building your business out, like, are there certain markets that you're in? Are there certain things that you're looking for? Are you looking for single family? Are you co-living? Like, what is your focus? Or are we still in that, like, we're figuring it out phase?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm working on narrowing it down. I mean, I started, when I was working with somebody, I had brought on an operations manager, and he was doing a lot of the underwriting. We were just like nationwide creative deals just to get the lead flow in to help him learn. And we've kind of backed off on that. Like especially nationwide, like it's just such a big, wide swath. Most of it,
Mhm.
honestly, was like Texas, Florida, the Carolinas, and it was just really hard to make the numbers work. So recently, what I have been focusing on is not even creative deals. I'll look at creative deals like local to me outside of the city of Philadelphia, but really been focused on cash deals that I can burr, again, outside of the Philadelphia area. But I've been really targeting Columbus, Ohio, and looking at that. And I have an agent sending me stuff. I'm connecting with wholesalers in that area. So right now, that's my current focus in like let's learn this market. Let's like completely understand it, know where I want to go. And so I've honed into that, but I still have some fine tuning to go on like specific
Mhm.
locations in there.
Okay. Now, as you've focused and narrowed, why do you feel like it's important to narrow that focus? Because I think we come into this real estate world and we see deals everywhere and we want to do everything and we want to try this one and that one, that shiny object syndrome. How do you feel like narrowing is going to be better for you?
It keeps you from having to almost restart, right? So when you're looking, when you're jumping around like that, and whether that's real estate or health and fitness or anything like that, like there's so many
Mhm.
ways to lose weight, right? There's this diet, there's that diet, there's CrossFit, there's running clubs, there's Orange Theory, there's they all work, right? As long as you do it consistently. So diving into a specific location, I can learn the area so much better. And I can start like it's going to be hard at first because like analyzing deals and you have to build the contacts up. But once you have the contacts up and you've run a lot of deals, you can kind of see pretty quickly and easily whether or not this is a deal without having to spend a ton of time on it. So being able to, go an inch wide by but a mile deep just allows things to be a little more
Mhm.
efficient. I think the hesitancy with doing that initially was like, I need leads and I need as many as possible. But I think there's downsides to that as well. Unless you already have those
Mhm.
contacts nationwide and have the experience nationwide, it makes it harder. But by focusing in on one area, once I have that experience, I can look at a deal in 5 minutes or less and go, at least initially, no, or I need to dig into this more. So being
Yeah.
focused is going to help because you don't have to restart that process, right? If I get a deal in Charlotte, North Carolina, cool. Is the area good? Is where the price range is at, where the rent rate's at? And then I spend 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes doing all of that. And then I get one in Tampa, Florida. Now I kind of have to redo that. And yeah, eventually you'll start seeing consistent cities, but still it's a restart every single time. So you get a lot of deals in, but you're spending a lot more time individually rather than just like, hey, let's focus on one area, learn that area, and now I can see things coming, yes or no, much easier and quicker.
Right, right. And I think the tendency is people don't want to limit themselves because they don't want to limit opportunities. They don't want to leave money on the table. But it's kind of like that, jack of all trades, master of none. And when you can narrow and focus and you have such a better understanding, like you said, you're going to move faster. And when you have the infrastructure in place, the contacts, the wholesalers, the end buyers, if you're wholesaling, you're the end buyer at this point, but you have the contacts in there, then, and maybe properties won't fit your buy box, but other people in the area because of that networking, you're going to you're going to move so much more fluidly in that space, and it's going to move you further faster. And I think that's true in a lot of things. One of the things that you said is if you do it consistently, right? And that's the key for life, right? We see those shiny objects and we want to start doing this, and then we're focused on this one. And when you don't do the boring work, the day in, the day out, the grind, kind of do the reps to build that muscle, you're never going to build that muscle. And I think that's so true in this game as well, is being able to focus, to really narrow and really harness that one market and get so good at it that you can just do things so automatically. Then you can shift and then you can work on another thing. But I think that key is go narrow to go big.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And even like another analogy too is, you're on one island and you want to get to another island, right? To get to that island, I need to build a bridge, right? And that one bridge could be wholesaling, one bridge could be buying holes, one bridge could be flipping, right? They all get to that financial freedom island that you
mhm.
want to get to. But if I build 10% of a bridge by wholesaling and then stop and go and build 10% of another bridge and then back to wholesaling again, or I'm trying to build
Mhm.
all three at the same time, it's going to take me 3 times as long rather than, hey, let's build this whole one bridge all the way over. And now I can just build the second bridge now that the first bridge is ready to
Yeah.
go and operating. So it's,
Yeah.
whether it's real estate, whether it's business, whether it's fitness, like pick one, figure out why you want to do it too. Like, are you in an appreciation market? Do you want a cash flow market? Do you want to buy and hold? Do you
Mhm.
want to flip? Like that helps narrow down where your focus is, figuring out what your
Mhm.
end goal is, and then just focusing on that and giving yourself the time to build that bridge. And maybe it's not the right bridge, but at least you've given yourself time to know that.
Mhm. Right, and kinda going back to the, what you're good at, what you're not good at, what you're good at but don't wanna do, or, those things too, and you can't do that without spending time. And whether that's 90 days, whether that's 6 months, whatever that looks like, you do kind of need to really get in there so you understand it before you're like, ah, just move on.
Yeah.
And so I think that's true. There's probably a lot of CrossFit stuff when you first saw it, you're like, what? I don't want to do that. But then may end up being your favorite thing to do. Um, and so with CrossFit now, you're kind of in that maintenance mode. Um, how long do you feel like it took you to get to that point where and was it because of the shift in life with your kiddo, or was it just like, I just feel good at this spot? Where did that shift come from?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both, right? I mean, obviously having an infant and toddler now, like that takes up a lot of my
Mhm.
time. I want my focus to be at that. But, I
Mhm.
think it was just to the point where I, to get significant improvements, like I don't want to or feel like I need to, like I would need to put in a lot of extra time, effort, and energy, both physically
Mhm.
and mentally, to get to that next level of lifting more, of being, fitter and being more competitive at these competitions. And it just wasn't worth the extra output is really what it came down to.
Mhm.
It's like, I'm not going to make
Yeah.
money off of this, right? I'm not making a living being competitive, and
Mhm.
therefore, like, I just want to enjoy it. Like, cause I did spend the time sacrificing a lot to work hard at it. And when you do something for that long, it eventually does get a little, I don't want to say boring, but you get tired of it. So it was just,
Mhm.
life changes definitely happened, but it was just like, I know I'm not willing to put in that extra work to push things further. So let's just enjoy the day in, the day out of it, compete in the one or two things a year, and know that, hey, it's probably not going to be where I would love for it to be, but I also didn't put the work in to get it that
Mhm.
way. So it's a
Right.
little combination of both.
Yeah, I think that's a healthy place to be, especially when you've accomplished some of the goals that you probably wanted to with it. You're doing those competitions, but then being able to just enjoy it. And I think that's like the best part of business is we're going to put in this work and we're going to do a lot of stuff. And then you're going to get to this point where you have this massive portfolio of buy and holds and you're going to get to enjoy it. And then you can kind of transition, right? Because you're going to be getting that cash flow, which is going to be amazing, and then we're going to be able to transition into the next thing
Mhm.
and something else that you're like, oh, okay, I've been wanting to do it, but I've been on my building that bridge. I'm building that bridge to that island, but I want to see this other island and I'm going to build a bridge there. And, I think that's kind of where my name for my podcast came, is because we have this evolution. As we learn more, we grow more, we can do more, but going deep on the one till you get that portfolio that you're looking for, and being able to move forward with it to other things. With your buy and hold business, are there things that you're looking to bring in to help move you forward, or are there things that you need to implement that our community can help you with?
I mean, for me, it's just deal flow. I mean, just increasing
Okay.
that at the moment, getting, I just kind of started really honing in on this a little bit more the last couple of weeks. And so just kind of building relationships with those wholesalers that are doing stuff in, Southeast PA and in Columbus area. That would be the biggest thing, is like, hey, let's hop on a call. Let me learn a little bit about what you're doing. If there's anything I can do to help. And, I would love to be able to buy deals from people. So I would say that's the main thing, is just getting the deal flows up. And then money's always good, right? Private money, doing a burr,
Yeah.
like short term stuff is good. If they have money and want to do long term, that's fine. But really, it's just money, deals. How can I get more deal flow? How can I get more wholesalers paid? And how can I get people who have money their returns that they're looking for?
Mhm. Awesome. And are you doing private money partnerships just depending, or are you preferring to have more PML type?
Yeah, I mean, I'm open to anything, right? I want to make it work. I want it to be a win-win for everybody. So, definitely open to any and every structure that is possible. Just depending on, as long as
Mhm.
our goals align and the numbers are there, that's all I'm looking for.
Right. That's the beauty of this community and the creative nature of this space, is there's so many ways to make it happen, to make it work, and to work with others. And you're going to find investors that have different goals than you, different requirements. And that's awesome that you're able to shift and kind of move with that. So I think that's a great place to be. Well, this has been so fun. I really love that we've been able to kind of move through this fitness and real estate journey and kind of weave them together, because there are so many parallels. And I think sports in general are so key for, a foundation for your journey through life, because they teach you so many fundamental things that you need to learn: consistency, repetition, grit, right? Determination, and kind of that stick to itness that, we all need, especially in this business, and that flexibility of being able to flow through market
Mhm.
changes, political changes, all the things that are, coming at us at this point. This has been fantastic. So obviously we can find you at the Wealthy Wellbeing podcast. Are there other ways that people can connect with you? If people are wholesalers and have deals for you, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah. So the Wealthy Wellbeing podcast is on Spotify. I have the YouTube channel has the video version of it. So YouTube, and then Instagram if you want to DM me, Zach Busch 924. And you can search me on Facebook, Zach Busch, and that's Busch, Busch, like the beer, not like the
Okay.
president.
Gotcha. Perfect. Perfect. Well, Zach, this has been phenomenal. You have been a wealth of knowledge and experience. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's been a blast. I really had a great time.
Awesome. All right, everyone. Until next time, have a good one. Take care.